This is the second video for the 6-2F lesson. Now we're going to go into just straight solving. We won't necessarily write out the step, algebraic step that we're doing. And we're going to watch out for traps involving no solution. And we might also try to predict early on if it's a plus or minus problem, because that can be something that is tricky. And as we go through these, we're doing this in simplest radical form. And before we do a square or a square root, it's going to be best to isolate the variable and do that at the very, very end. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So number 5, we're going to square root both sides. That will cancel that. Oh, we have a negative, so we'll just stop and say no solution. By the way, you can verify all of these. In the last part of this lesson, we will verify. So if you're still not sure why this is no solution, you can go about this with a verify. Number 6, I know I'm going to need to square this, but before I do that, I'm going to get rid of this 3. It is 3 times root y, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3. We need to do this before we start to square root. It generally does not work out well. You might stumble upon a right answer occasionally. Other problems, you will not get to the right answer if you don't do this first. Then we're going to square both sides. And we're going to use some parentheses here because that would be the proper way to square this. And let's think about this. We said that when was x squared, that would lead to plus or minus. This is not x squared, it's square root. So this is not a plus or minus problem, and we have y equals 1/9. So only one answer for this. Look at 2 more. You might be ready actually to try these on your own. And then I'm going to leave some that I'm not going to show a video for that you can try entirely on your own. But I would encourage you to maybe pause the video, try these in the Desmos slide, and maybe come back or try them on your paper. Number 7, we are going to square root on both sides. This looks isolated and ready to go. The only thing standing in the way of a being alone is exponent 2. This one is going to have a plus or minus. So before I forget, I'm going to write that down. I don't want to just do the problem and write at the end. I want to write it right after I do my square root. So I'm going to do the square root of 1 over the square root of 8. I'm going to simplify this. So I have plus or minus 1 over square root of 8 is 2 root 2. And I'm going to need to simplify by rationalizing. And I have plus or minus root 2 over 2 times 2. And so we have plus or minus root 2 over 4 is our final answer. Fully simplified. That one was a little tricky. First part was easy. Forgetting the plus or minus is pretty common, and remembering how to simplify square roots. Number 8. This is what I mean. If we start to do square roots too early on, it does not work. First off, I know this is going to be a plus or minus problem. It has exponent 2. 9 is also plus or minus, and 10 is not. So I'm going to move the 7. I'm going to follow all my, essentially my 7th grade steps. That's 7th grade. That's 7th grade. And now I'm going to do my 8th grade step, which is I'm going to square root both sides. And I have x equals plus or minus root 30. And root 30 is 6 times 5. There's not going to be any pairs in there, so that is fully simplified. Remember to first isolate before you do squaring or square root, and maybe make a note if it is a plus or minus problem. And again, by the way, you can also write it as negative root 30 comma root 30, that these either or will work as a solution.